Dr. Luqman Zakariyah Kulliyyah of Islamic Review Knowledge and Human Science and International Islamic University, Malaysia. The topic is the aspect of Islamic law for halal products and services in new era. Please on the stage.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Very good afternoon and good morning to all of you. I think we are now at the trigger to the afternoon, and we are also at the end of the morning. Today, I recognize that there are many speakers who have to speak before Jummah service. And at the same time, I recognize that I'm being invited from Kuala Lumpur to here. It is not just only 1 hour journey, but also a lot of stress and sleepless since probably 1 or 2 weeks to figure out what I'm going to talk here today. But because most of my speakers who have spoken before me, they've talked about many things that we need to know about halal and haram, I will quickly use my ample time, probably 10 to 15 minutes, to emphasize the niche area that I want to talk about today. Bearing in mind that I'm here as a keynote speaker, not as a paper presenter, which I'm going to do tomorrow. I will go through the slide, but I will emphasize on the most important thing that we need to know in terms of Islamic law in this particular conference. But before, I have an abstract which has been stated there. And if you go through, there are some questions I ask, which are very polemic and very disturbing, challenging to those who are in the industry. Because I'm a teacher, I always theorize things and criticize things, but I do not practice what is going on in the field. That is why issues like how can we expand the scope of halal industry is something need to be studied and researched. What are the purpose of the industry of halal? Is it to consume money and take money from people, or to offer service to the community? Is something also we need to research on. And that is why, coming back to the experts in fiqh and usul fiqh or sharia are very important to those who are in the industry, so that they don't do anything that we become very disturbing to the Muslims, also that we incur the wrath of Allah. So my speech is divided into some segments. The first thing is to look at the concept of halal, which I think most of us have known before. But the concept of halal is very important to start with, because when we look at the industry today, more emphasis are put on the food and other products bypass of food. But there are other things that we need to think about in Islamic or halal industry. That is why food is one, property is second, and we have all the derivatives in these two things. In terms of food, many speakers have spoken about food and the process of food, what is halal in it and what is haram in it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in the Holy Quran what is halal in food consumption and what is haram in food consumption. But bear in mind that the general principle in Islamic law is that al-aslu and al-ashya al-ibaha. The general principle in Islamic law is everything is based on permissibility until when otherwise is proven. That proof must come from the Quran and Hadith of the Prophet. If there is no any proof from the Quran and Sunnah, then the Muslim or the scholar cannot brand anything haram until when it's very sure that it is haram or it is halal. That is why the Prophet ﷺ, it is reported to have said, إن الحلال بين وإن الحرام بين وبينهما أمور مشتبهة لا يعلمها كثير من الناس فمن اتقى الشبهات فقد استبرأ لدينه وعرضه ومن وقع في الشبهات وقع في الحرام. The Prophet is reported to say that halal is clear and haram is also clear. But between the two, there are some issues which are doubtful, uncertain. فَمَنِ اتَّقَى الشُّبَهَاتِ, that is the point that I want to emphasize. فَمَنِ اتَّقَى الشُّبَهَاتِ, whoever refrain from shubahat, فَقَدْ اسْتَبْرَأَ لِدِينِهِ وَعِرْضِهِ, he has purified and dignified his religion and his own personality. وَمَنْ وَقَعَ فِي الشُّبَهَاتِ, whoever doesn't care and he fall into shubahat, وَقَعَ فِي الْحَرَامِ, he has involved in haram. The Prophet didn't say he has involved in halal. That is why the Muslim scholar said that al-mushtabahat, anything that has shubha, is it halal, inclined to halal, or inclined to haram? Majority of scholars said that, well, the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell us that inclined to haram, but he is very close to haram. So that is why what they call precaution in Islam is very important, that one has to have what they call al-ihtiyat fi din, to have precaution in Islam. What about the property? I mentioned about food and property. Property also has some kind of shubahat in it. There are many contracts in Islamic banking and finance today which are also controversial, like bi'ut tawarruq, bi'ul ina, and so on and so forth. The Muslim scholar who are expert on Islamic finance has been speaking about this particularly. The derivative of prohibited food is also mentioned by my honorable professor just now, that there are many derivatives in food and other things that we classify as halal or haram. But I mentioned only two things here. Adulteration in halal products. When halal has been adulterated, is it halal or haram? The Muslim scholar said that we have to classify this as shubuhat. And that is why to refrain from something like that is more encouraging and more important to a good Muslim. Also, contamination is also part of the things that they classify as mutashabihat. When halal is contaminated with haram thing, a Muslim should refrain from something like that. But if eventually needs something like that, should we say that he has consumed or he has done something haram or halal? The Muslim scholar also have very good talk on it. Also, I want to mention about innovation in this particular field of halal and haram. So I've mentioned about the clear and the clear haram, clear halal, and mutashabihat. But let us look at the. I've talked about the derivative as well. Because of time factor, this is all what has been said before. But my concern would be I talk about this. Okay. How can we make innovation in Islamic finance, in Islamic halal, and so on and so forth? It's something very important that we talk about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in the Quran that Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tas'alu an ashya in tubd lakum tasu'ukum. Never ask about nitty-gritty of things, because if it appears to you, it will harm you. And that is why the Muslim scholar said that anything that Allah doesn't say anything about it, whether it is halal or haram, the Muslim scholar have said that it is permissible for you to use. But how can we expand the field of halal and haram industry? I mentioned one thing is through qiyas, analogical reasoning. Qiyas in Islamic legal theory is something that we use to advance something that Al-Quran or Sunnah of the Prophet has said about. So this qiyas has been explained in the book of Usul al-Fiqh, and there are many debates on this issue, which some scholars take one side and another scholar take another side. Some say that anything that Allah has mentioned, you can never use analogical reasoning on it. And some scholars said, yes, we can use it. Imam Shafi, rahimahullah ta'ala, in Ar-Risala is of opinion that analogical reasoning is a good tool to expand the field of industry, to make sure that the Muslim community are at ease in their life so that they don't find things difficult. Today we talk about gelatin. Allah doesn't talk about it. There are many scientific proof that gelatin may be from pea or this and that. If you do not do research on it, how can you know that you are eating haram or you are eating halal? Another way of expanding the scope of halal and haram is through what they call al-maslaha. Maslaha in the sense that when something is haram, but there is need to use it. How could you manage or mitigate between what Allah has said and what the public need? And that is why I can quote some of the incidents in Malaysia during the time of Islamic banking and finance. They allow Bay'ul Ina is back. And some people say that it is haram, it is not good. But the government said that because there is a need for it and for the maslaha of Ummah, we have to go for it. That is why they allow something like that in Malaysia. Similarly, some of the things that we are having today in the industry of halal food can be accommodated if there is need for that particular thing. So, halal products extension, not only on food, as I mentioned, but also it can go to many other scopes. It can be on food, cosmetic, pharmaceutical, on tourism, hospitality, and so on and so forth. It also extends to what they call finance. It also extends to halal education. It can be on fashion. It can be on auditing, and there are many other scopes like family institution, which can be branded as halal. Governance, it can be halal as well. All these things, there are many issues that engulf this industry. I've mentioned in my paper, unfortunately, a few time spent on the presentation, but more time spent on the preparation. And we enjoy something like that because we can publish our paper after the presentation. That is the good side of academia. All these issues I've mentioned, if you look at them, something is missing, which is a niche area of my presentation, is the dimension of all these innovations. Let me give you 1 and 2 and 3 of it: spirituality, legality, and morality of the industry. What I mean by the spirituality, is that why do we need halal food, halal money, halal industry? Why? Why do we need it? Is it just because we want to earn money, or because people need it and we have to provide it? That is not the case. In spirituality, halal industry will connect you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you eat halal, you earn halal, then the connectivity between you and Allah will be very smooth. And that can be ascertained in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when a man was asking Allah, and he was saying, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. The Prophet says, Mat'amu haram. He felt in haram. Wa malbasu haram. He clothed in haram. Wa mashrabu haram. He drinks in haram. Wa ghudhiya fil haram. He nurtured in haram. Anne yustajabu lah. How can Allah accept his prayer? It means if you do not take halal, you are taking haram, there is more chance that your prayer will not be accepted. And the disconnection between you and God will be there. And that's why we have to make sure that the consumer and the producer must adventure on halal, not on haram. The second one, which is very important, is the legality aspect of it. Though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't put any punishment in consuming haram, but if the government has seen it as compelling to make sure that the Muslim Ummah and the universe are living in a correct atmosphere, then that legality has to be upheld, holding one from breaching the rule And that is the role of the government, that had to come to a standard. That is why we have standard in halal food, standard in halal logistics, and so on and so forth. This legality must be exercised in any Muslim country so that the Ummah will live in a good atmosphere and they will be healthy, and so on and so forth. Lastly is about the morality. The morality is to meet human-based standard. We are living together as human beings, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want you to cheat another person. So when you are trying to do adulteration to the food, that means you are cheating and you deceive your brother and your sister. And that is why the Prophet ﷺ, in one of his hadiths, he says, Man gashana falaysa minna. Whoever deceives us in the market is not part of us. So that has to do about the moral aspect of dealing with people. So maximization of profits in the industry is not allowed. Leverage on the psyche of people is not allowed. Exploitation in offering halal is not good. And that is why it is important that the Muslim community must call people into accountability. And that is why we have audit halal. So when you audit people, you put standard there, you are trying to make sure that they do not commit anything immoral. And that is why Allah has said in the Quran, وَلِتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. In conclusion, Islam is holistic religion in nature, but human behaviors tend to taint the talents of Islam for personal needs, and as such, unforeseen circumstances may arise from this attitude for the Muslim and Islam in the future. And because of that, there must be a standard that will regulate the affairs of the Muslim, and that's the job of the government or individual to make sure that there is a standard in correcting the wrong thing that the people are doing in the market. And for that, we can live in harmony with ourselves, and our money will be pure, and Allah can bless our income, and we rest assured that we are living in a healthy environment. And that is all about halal industry. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you for the interesting topic speech from Dr. Luqman Zakariyah Kulliyyah. Next, what is the last